Hey guys, tonight we slither into the leaf-littered underworld of Southeast Asia, where shadows move like whispers, and one particular creature wears a crown it never asked for. You, dear listener, are about to be born as a King Cobra, majestic in title, but oh so pathetic in practice. Right now, you're curled up inside an egg, the size of a lime, somewhere deep in the jungle. No cozy nest made of feathers, just a loosely stacked mound of rotting leaves, your mother scraped together in the kind of maternal effort that says, "Good luck, kid. You're on your own after this." The warmth of decomposition is your only incubator. There's no lullaby, no prenatal pep talk, just the soft crackle of insects and the occasional sniff of something carnivorous shuffling by. Then, with a squirm and a tear, you burst forth. "Welcome to the world, little monarch. Hope you brought a sword. You're about a foot long, striped like a caution tape, and venomous enough to kill a human within hours. But the jungle doesn't care about your chemical advantage. The moment you emerge, you're just a wiggly meat snack with no entourage. Your mom, gone, vanished into the underbrush days ago, like a freelancer ghosting their client after payment. And that's when reality hits. You are royalty in name only. Within minutes, you're bombarded by sensory overload. The heat feels like someone's pressing you against a stove. The air is thick with rot, mold, and mosquito buzz. You're hungry, exposed, and worst of all, absolutely delicious to almost everything that moves. Birds of prey scan from above with laser focus. Monitor lizards stalk the floor with twitchy tongues. Even your distant cousin, the rat snake, wouldn't mind a bite. Scientists estimate that over 90% of King Cobra hatchlings never make it to adulthood. That's not a figure, it's a prophecy. And if you're banking on your venom to save you, think again. You're not the only venomous noodle in the neighborhood. Here comes a banded crate, slithering past, thick with black and yellow arrogance. Could you fight him? Maybe. Would it be smart? Absolutely not. But you don't know that yet. You're a newborn in a deathmatch arena. And here's the worst part. Your body knows things your brain doesn't. You have the instincts to flick your tongue, to freeze when you sense movement, to coil when afraid. But actual wisdom, strategy, emotional intelligence, that's for later, if you live long enough to develop it. There's no one to teach you how to hunt. No father figure slapping your tail like, "Son, today we practice snake fu." No wise elder hissing life advice from a rock. All you've got is your twitchy reflexes, your venom glands, and your snake gut guesswork. And good luck getting any sympathy. Even your fellow jungle dwellers seem to hate you on principle. Frogs flee, birds shriek warnings, monkeys, those drama-loving gossips, scream your arrival through the canopy like they're announcing a villain in a soap opera. Your reputation precedes you, but your survival skills haven't caught up yet. Here's a fringe tidbit for your crown. Some local legends claim that king cobras can reincarnate as forest spirits, guardians of sacred groves. Cute idea, but tell that to the tree shrew that just tried to eat your tail. Sacred or not, you're still protein. And while we're at it, let's talk about that crown. Why king? It's not because you rule anything. It's because you eat other snakes. That's right. Your regal title comes from being a snake eater. It's like calling someone CEO because they chew their co-workers. Poetic, sure, but it doesn't win you any friends. Some biologists still debate whether the king cobra is a true cobra at all. Taxonomically, it doesn't fit perfectly with the Naja genus. And it's in a class of its own, Ophiophagus hanna, which literally translates to snake eater. Your name is a menu. That's your legacy. But for now, forget the throne. Forget the respect. You're barely an inch above a worm with a fancy poison kit. And your odds of making it through the week? Not great. So you burrow deeper into the leaves, barely breathing, hoping no claw, beak, or fang finds you tonight. The moon rises overhead, but you won't be basking in it. No, you'll be lying in the dark, blending with decay, wishing your scales weren't quite so shiny. Royalty, my dear listener, has never looked so terrified. You're barely minutes old, and the jungle's already handed you its welcome gift. Absolute chaos. The leaf litter crackles with every twitch of your body. You don't crawl so much as flop in jagged, twitchy serifs, pulled along by pure instinct. You flick your tongue, taste particles you don't understand, and you're supposed to just know what to do. Congratulations, you have fangs, venom, and zero tutorials. Born lethal, but laughably clueless. The good news, your venom is already live. The bad news, you haven't figured out how to aim it. Your bite is more a frantic jab than a calculated strike. Like a toddler with a loaded taser, you're dangerous in the worst way, especially to yourself. One misbite, one poorly chosen target, and it's curtains. Because fun fact, other venomous snakes don't come with warning labels. And in your line of work, mistaken identity is fatal. Your first real challenge slinks by on a lazy afternoon. A juvenile green pit viper coils near a rotting log, barely moving. It looks slow, harmless even, and you're starving. Your belly has been whispering threats for hours now, and instinct says, strike. You do. You lunge, miss the neck, and instead land your bite on its midsection. A splash of venom goes in. A rush of panic follows, because while you're waiting for your chemical warfare to work, the pit viper turns, opens its mouth, and lands a retaliatory bite right behind your head. Whoops. This right here is why biologists call young king cobras reckless feeders. You eat what you shouldn't. You fight what you can't win. You burn through venom, like a drunk burns through excuses. And every wasted drop of venom means time and energy your body doesn't have. Producing venom isn't free. It's like firing bullets when you're living paycheck to paycheck. One recent study even suggests that juvenile cobras burn up to 40% more energy producing venom than adults, which makes every unnecessary bite an overdraft on your already bleak survival account. But you don't know that. You just know you're still hungry, sore, and now possibly dying from someone else's poison. Let's back up to the ridiculous part. You have the tools of a killer without the experience. You're designed to be the apex predator of snakes. Your fangs are fixed, grooved hypodermic needles, ready to inject enough neurotoxin to down an elephant, if you knew how to deliver it right. But you don't, not yet. Some herpetologists still debate whether king cobras learn through failed hunts, or whether it's all just blind instinct. You'd prefer the first, because then at least your embarrassment might serve a purpose. But either way, your first week is full of failed attempts, close calls, and desperate slithers into whatever shadow hides you from becoming dinner. And then there's the psychological part. Yes, snakes get stress. You're skittish, quick to flinch, prone to freezing in place when things move too fast. Imagine trying to learn a new skill while also dodging death every 10 seconds. That's your life. That's the game. It's venom practice, by way of dodgeball with knives. Now, let's address that fringe tidbit. The jungle doesn't want you to know. King cobras have a growl. Not a roar, not a hiss. A low, eerie rumble produced by resonating their tracheal air sac. You're the only snake in the world with this feature. Supposedly, it's to intimidate threats by sounding bigger than you are. Cool party trick, right? Too bad it doesn't work until you're at least a meter long. Right now, you'd be lucky to scare a gecko. So, you're small, venomous, and wildly underqualified for the gig you were born into. You'd think the title king would come with a little prestige, maybe some allies, a throne, at least a fruit basket? Nope. Just another day of learning the hard way. By the time you get your first kill, a half-paralyzed rat snake, you're too exhausted to even enjoy it. You drag the meal behind a rock, wrap your jaws around it, and feel your skull flex unnaturally wide to accommodate its girth. It takes nearly an hour to swallow, and halfway through you hear footsteps in the leaves. Something big, something mammalian. You freeze. This is the second brutal lesson of your babyhood. Digestion makes you slow. You can't move properly with a snake in your belly. You're bloated, sluggish, and if someone wants to make a leather wallet out of your skin, now's their chance. Royal lineage doesn't mean much when you're halfway through lunch and a civet shows up. The jungle doesn't forgive. It doesn't pause because you're tired or spare you because you're young. And as you bloat under the weight of your first swallowed kill, you feel the full consequence of your biological design. You have no hands, no claws, no way to stash food or defend yourself mid-meal. So you lie there, helpless, grotesquely distended, and praying that whatever's crashing through the leaves isn't fast enough to kill you before you can slither half a meter. You try to vanish. You tuck your head beneath some damp palm fronds, but your body is swollen, sluggish, and obvious. The civet's sniffing grows louder. You feel the earth vibrate under its cautious paws. In that moment, you realize another core fact of Cobra existence. You are a slow-motion hunter in a fast-paced world. You may have venom, length, and legend, but you do not have speed. Not when it counts. Not now. Some experts argue that digestion is the most vulnerable time for a snake, not because it makes you weaker, but because it makes you visible, and the jungle is a place where visibility equals death. The civet inches closer. Your body screams, "Flee!" but your stretched stomach says, "Try it, and you'll rupture something." So you wait. The civet finally moves on, chasing some easier snack, maybe a gecko. You survive. Barely. But survival is a currency that buys you nothing but another day of anxiety. And this is only the first of many close calls. A few days later, you're on the move again, coiled in tension, weaving through a root maze like a dark rope with commitment issues. Your eyes scan for prey, but also for threats. Birds, mammals, even other snakes, especially other snakes. Because here's the twisted irony. You're designed to eat your own kind, but you're not the only one. King cobras eat other snakes, sure, but so do kraits, so do rat snakes, so do vine snakes. It's a cannibal's buffet out there. The ecosystem you belong to is full of backstabbing, venom-fueled cousins. And at this size, you are still on the appetizer end of the scale. This is where your instincts get weird. You begin to feel it, that subtle chemical itch that tells you what you're meant to eat. You taste scent trails on your tongue, trails left by snakes you've never met, and something deep inside you, something older than language, starts to whisper, "That one. Hunt that one." Herpetologists still argue how much of a king cobra's diet is guided by inherited preference versus environmental learning. Do you eat snakes because it's hardwired, or because you tried biting a frog once, and it gave you the runs for 3 days? Nobody knows for sure, but you're beginning to lean toward born this way. Every time you cross a trail left by another snake, your mouth waters, your heart quickens. You want to follow. One afternoon it happens. You find the trail of a smaller cobra, not your species, some other hood-flaring amateur with a temper. You follow it for over an hour, tongue flicking, heart hammering. Finally you find him. He's resting in the shade of a rotting log, unaware of your presence. You strike, clean, the venom flows. You eat him. There's no guilt, no glory, just biology. You feel the same way a vending machine must feel after dropping a snack. Inevitable, hollow, necessary. And in doing so you level up. Your body digests the proteins of another snake. Your brain sharpens. Your fangs feel stronger. You don't grow taller, exactly, but something shifts. You're not a noodle anymore. You're a noodle with trauma and confidence. You're learning how to be a king cobra. Now here's a bizarre tidbit you won't hear on most nature shows. Some villagers in India believe that a king cobra can remember faces, that if you kill its mate, it will track you down in vengeance. Scientists laugh at the idea, of course. You don't have facial recognition software baked into your brain, but the myth persists. Probably because it speaks to a deeper fear, that the jungle is not just wild, but personal. You slither on. Rain falls hard that night, turning the forest floor to soup. Your scales gleam wet under moonlight, your head rising like a periscope between puddles. You're alone, always alone, and still, somehow too loud, because the final insult of your babyhood is this. You grow fast, and that makes you a bigger target. You're already longer than most snakes in the forest. You're too big to hide well, too heavy to vanish like you used to. You can't escape the sound of your own movement. Every time you push through the underbrush, it sounds like someone flipping a tarp. It's a miracle you haven't been eaten already, and yet, something inside you feels proud. You've survived the first few weeks. You've fed, grown, and dodged death at least a dozen times. Your name might be king in the textbooks, but out here you're still a scrappy little misfit with a crown made of hunger and scars. Sleep tight, jungle royalty. You've made it past the first trials of survival, but don't get comfortable. The real nightmare's just beginning. You're growing, yes, but in this jungle, growth is not a gift, it's a liability. You're too long to vanish into roots, too bulky to dart up a tree, and too loud for stealth. You've become noticeable, and nothing dies faster in a forest than the noticeable. The rains haven't stopped in days. Mud drips from every surface. Your scales feel slick, heavy. Even your tongue flicks slower now, weighted by water droplets. You drag yourself across the soaked forest floor, winding through bamboo stalks and abandoned termite mounds, and every slither is a gamble. Because this is the part no one tells you: everything you want to eat now can kill you back. You're not built for rodents, birds, or frogs. You're built to eat snakes, but snakes fight, and the ones worth eating, venomous ones like kraits or coral snakes, don't go down without a duel. You're a specialist in a world that rewards generalists. The rat snake is faster, the python is stronger, the vine snake is camouflaged to the point of invisibility. But you're built like a needle-wielding javelin, with limited energy and a massive ego. Here comes a moment you won't forget. You spot a crate, not full-grown, but big enough to make your stomach purr. It's basking on a flat rock, unaware or uncaring. You slide into position, body coiled just right, tongue flicking with the rhythm of a drum roll. One strike, that's all you need. You lunge, and you miss. The crate whips around, sinks its fangs into your midsection, and bolts into the underbrush. The bite burns, not like yours, a sharp numbness, but a white-hot needle, slow and crawling. You feel it racing through your blood. You don't scream. You can't. But if you could, you would. This is when your body does something terrifying. It shuts down. You coil tightly, trembling, and your heart rate slows to a crawl. For hours, you stay like that, half dead, half praying. It's not noble. It's not epic. It's just pitiful, shivering in a puddle of your own venom sweat, hoping the jungle forgets you exist. Scientists still debate how often king cobras survive venomous bites from their prey. Some say your physiology gives you partial resistance. Others argue it's a numbers game. You get lucky more often than not. But there's no guarantee, not when your next meal might be your final mistake. And if that wasn't enough stress, let's talk about humans. You don't understand them, but they show up in strange ways. Rubber boots stomping through the foliage, flashlights like mini-suns, voices like thunder. They don't kill for hunger. They kill because you're scary, because someone's cousin told a story, because they saw a video, because you exist. One fringe report from a herpetologist suggests that even juvenile king cobras can trigger panic-induced injuries in humans. Sprained ankles, broken wrists, heart attacks, just from being spotted. You're basically a mobile trauma event. Congratulations. So you learn to hide better. You avoid trails. You move only when necessary. You start to think like prey, not predator, because the jungle doesn't care about your venom. It cares that you're too big, too bright, too bold. And even when you get it right, when you land a perfect strike, coil just so, swallow a rival whole, there's no reward, no ceremony. just the next moment, the next hunger, the next shadow moving where it shouldn't. You slither past a mound of feathers and bones. Maybe it was an eagle's kill. Maybe it'll be yours next time. Your scales are scratched, some chipped. You carry the faint scar of the crate bite. You're no longer pristine. You're seasoned now, bitter, efficient, quieter. And here's the last joke of the day. Your venom, your ultimate weapon, is slowly becoming more potent. But every time you use it, you risk exposure, movement, retaliation. It's a scalpel you wield in a fistfight, precision in a place that rewards chaos. You curl beneath a log, heart thudding, and wait for the next lesson. The jungle offers no breaks, only silence, and something circling in the dark. Let's talk about courtship, because if your daily diet of death and dodgeball wasn't exhausting enough, you now have to factor in romance, and by romance, I mean violent, unpredictable tail grappling, with another equally venomous creature who may or may not be in the mood to kill you afterward. Welcome to Cobra dating. You're older now, longer, sleeker, nearly 4 meters of coiled tension and quiet hunger. The jungle doesn't mess with you as often, but that doesn't mean you're safe. It just means you've become part of the background noise until mating season hits, and the silence breaks into chaos. It starts with a smell, a chemical breadcrumb trail left behind by a female ready to breed. It hits your tongue like lightning pheromones, thick and ancient, and suddenly you're a poet, a dreamer, a love-struck assassin with a single mission: find her before someone else does. Because here's the twist. You're not the only male on the trail. You slither faster than usual, body alert, every flick of the tongue pulling you closer to that intoxicating signal. The forest smells different now, musky, tense, electric. And then you find her. She's massive, thicker than you, darker in color, with eyes that shine like polished obsidian. She's resting beneath a tangle of ferns, calm, but not passive. She senses you, she watches, and she waits. You approach, carefully. But before you can so much as raise your hood in flirtation, another male arrives. This is the part nobody warned you about. King Cobra mating involves combat, not with the female, with your rival. There are no flowers, no dances, no serenades, just 2 males, locked in what herpetologists call a ritual combat dance. What you'll come to know is 2 hours of body-slamming tail judo. You rise, so does he. You wrap around each other, pressing upward, swaying, shoving. You twist, coil, and slam. It's like a martial arts tournament held inside a rope factory. There's no biting allowed. This is not a duel to the death. It's a testosterone-fueled wrestling match for the right to mate. But it still hurts. Your ribs creak. Your muscles burn. Your pride teeters on the edge. The loser? He slinks away, bruised, humiliated, and celibate. The winner? That's you. You turn back to the female, now watching with a patience that can only be described as murderously bored. But she doesn't flee. She accepts your presence. Slowly, cautiously, you make contact. Here's a strange and oddly sweet fringe fact. King Cobra mating can last over 24 hours. Not in a rush, are you? You remain coiled together, slow and methodical, synchronized, like vines in a slow-motion embrace. But don't be fooled. This intimacy comes with risk, because when it's over, you slither away. But she doesn't follow. She's not yours. There are no Cobra couples, no forest honeymoon. She's a lone queen with her own plans. And those plans, they're surprisingly maternal. Unlike most snakes, the female King Cobra will build a nest. With her body, she gathers leaves into a mound, creating a warm, damp pile for her eggs. And then, astonishingly, she guards it. For over 2 months, scientists still debate why king cobras evolved this rare parental behavior. Some argue it's a protective adaptation in competitive snake habitats. Others believe it's a byproduct of size. Bigger snakes just can. But either way, it's rare, and it's dangerous. Because as she broods, motionless and alert, other animals begin to take interest. Monitor, lizards, civets, even other snakes. All of them smell eggs, and none of them care that she's technically a widow with fangs. She must defend her clutch constantly. She hisses, lunges, even mock charges intruders. But the longer she sits there, the weaker she becomes. No food, no rest, no guarantees. Eventually, she'll abandon the nest just before hatching. Maybe instinct tells her to leave. Maybe she knows what comes next isn't survivable. And when the eggs hatch, the cycle begins again. Tiny kings, alone, already hunted, destined to repeat your mistakes, unless one of them, by miracle or madness, survives to wrestle for love, just like you did. You don't know if your offspring made it. You never will. You just keep moving. Because in this jungle, even kings don't get a legacy, just another day alive. Now that you've survived your own birth, eaten your own kind, and slam-danced your way into fatherhood, you'd think the jungle might give you a break. Maybe a throne made of vines, a squirrel butler, a little sign that says respect the crown. But no, what you get instead is land, or rather, the need for it. You're entering adulthood, and that means territory, because king cobras aren't just wandering hitmen, they're solitary rulers. You don't share space, you don't do roommates, you claim a patch of forest and defend it like it's your Wi-Fi signal. Here's the cruel twist. You don't actually have a castle. Your territory isn't marked by visible borders or flags. It's defined by scent trails, subtle body oil, and pure audacity. You start patrolling an area, about 5 square kilometers if you're lucky, slithering along the same paths, rubbing against the same logs, letting every creature know, this belongs to me. Like writing your name on a foggy window, only the window is a murder swamp. But land comes with problems. Other king cobras want it too. You begin to sense their presence. Occasional trails over your own, the lingering smell of scales that aren't yours. Every flick of your tongue is a tiny lie detector test. And soon, the inevitable happens. You meet another king. This isn't courtship. This isn't love. This is war. Your heads rise. Your bodies sway. But this time, it's no wrestling match. This is a full-on territorial showdown. If you're lucky, it ends with one of you backing down. If not, someone's going to get bitten. Herpetologists have documented king cobra territorial battles ending in paralysis or death. It's rare, but when it happens, it's brutal. Venom flies. Bodies coil tighter than rope pulled through gears. You use your entire frame as a weapon, and the longer the fight goes on, the more it becomes a test of endurance, not just strength. Eventually, one of you wins. Maybe it's you, maybe your rival limps off, dripping venom and dignity. Either way, you now hold the rights to a plot of land no human would pay rent for, muddy, full of leeches, and echoing with the groans of distant boars. Still, this territory is everything. It's where you hunt, where you rest, where you return, again and again, as if it anchors your existence. It's your invisible kingdom, and every day you wake up and don't find another cobra in it is a small venomous victory. But don't get too smug, because you're big now, really big. King cobras can grow up to 18 feet long, making them the longest venomous snake on the planet. That's nearly the size of a small car, except with fangs and an attitude problem. And while that sounds awesome in theory, it comes with complications. For one, you're noisy. You crush undergrowth when you move. Birds scatter, frogs shriek, even monkeys pause their screaming just long enough to whisper, "Oh no, it's him." You can't sneak up on anything anymore. You're too long for stealth, too heavy for grace, too royal for silence. And that makes you a target. Enter the mongoose, your old nemesis, the one creature that looks at your hood flare and says, "Cute, let's dance." The Indian grey mongoose is fast, nimble, and has a partial resistance to your venom, not immunity, resistance. which means your bite isn't always a death sentence. Sometimes it's just a mild inconvenience. You cross paths with one now. He's cocky. He circles you. His fur stands on end, like he just heard a good joke and didn't want to laugh. You flare your hood. You growl, that low, bone-rattling sound no other snake can make, and he still doesn't flinch. You strike. He dodges. He fakes. He bobs. He weaves. You try again. Miss again. Miss again. Miss again. Miss again. Miss again. Not deep. Not critical, but enough to make you retreat. The jungle cheers. You slither off, defeated, but alive, nursing a bruised ego and a bleeding pride. And you realize something no one ever wants to admit. Being king doesn't mean you always win. It just means everyone knows your name. So now you've got land. You've got venom. You've got battle scars. And a growing mythos echoing through the underbrush. But all of that comes at a cost. You're big, yes, but also slow, loud, predictable. You no longer blend into the jungle. You define it. And that makes you vulnerable in an entirely new way. Let's paint the scene. Midday. The sun is boiling the canopy. Birds are silent. Even the monkeys have paused their soap opera arguments. You, however, are on the move, because your territory demands patrolling, and your hunger doesn't take holidays. You slide through the roots like a jungle roomer, scales dragging against bark and dirt, when suddenly, crack, a sound, sharp, artificial, and then whack, you've just been hit. Not by tooth or claw, but by rubber, a boot. Welcome to the world of humans. Again, only now, it's worse. See, before you were just a baby snake, occasionally spotted by barefoot farmers. Now, you're a full-grown nightmare, a creature that can stand up, hiss loud enough to make dogs cry, and drop a buffalo if provoked. You are no longer just feared, you are targeted. In many parts of India and Southeast Asia, king cobras are killed on sight. Sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's superstition, sometimes it's a terrified farmer trying to protect his goats. Doesn't matter. Once you're spotted, there's usually only one outcome. And spoiler, it doesn't involve you slithering into the sunset with a medal. You've become a symbol of danger, of myth, of all the things people don't understand. And symbols don't get second chances. Today, though, you're lucky. The boot wearer didn't spot your head, just a flick of tail disappearing into ferns. They move on. You stay still, every muscle tight, heart pounding so slow you feel your own blood crawl. And this is your new normal, hiding from the species that turned machetes into a pest control solution. Fringe fact of the day: some local tribes believe that killing a king cobra brings a curse, that its spirit lingers, waiting for revenge. Others think the opposite, that killing one prevents disaster. Either way, your fate is no longer just ecological, it's spiritual. Your death is somebody's superstition, and your survival is someone else's omen. You retreat further into your territory, but even that's shrinking. Over the past decade, deforestation has carved chunks out of your world. What used to be 5 square kilometers of lush canopy is now 2, and it's littered with plastic wrappers and burnt wood. The bamboo thickets you once hunted in, replaced by banana plantations and dusty roads. Your jungle is evaporating, and with it, your right to exist. Biologists are sounding the alarm. The king cobra is listed as vulnerable, and not just because of hunting. It's habitat loss, roads, pollution, urban sprawl. Every new hut, every palm oil farm, every machete-swinging villager cuts deeper into your life. And guess who moves in to replace you? Pythons. Yeah, the big boys. While you're losing ground, they're thriving, eating goats, swallowing chickens whole, becoming memes on the internet. You're the fading monarch in a kingdom being eaten by squatters, and it stings. But you keep moving, because that's all you've ever done. You follow an old trail you used as a juvenile, now overgrown and barely recognizable. A familiar tree, once your resting spot, has been chopped down. A puddle where you used to drink, now filled with motor oil. This isn't your jungle anymore. It's someone else's construction site. Still, you press on, because your instincts are stronger than despair, because you haven't died yet, because despite everything, humans, mongooses, crates, shrinking forests, and YouTube clickbait, you're still here, for now. The longer you live, the louder the jungle gets. Not with sound, but with tension. You feel it in the air, taste it on your tongue, sense it in the ground. The rhythms of your world are changing. Peri patterns are shifting. Rain doesn't fall when it's supposed to. Dry seasons drag longer. And you, the so-called king, are learning just how little control you actually have. It starts with the hunt. You've become large, too large for comfort. You need bigger meals to sustain your weight. But bigger meals mean more risk. You track a water snake for an hour, through flooded foliage, only to find it already gutted by a heron. You consider a rat snake, but it's learned new tricks, slithering up impossible branches, where your bulk can't follow. Hunger gnaws at you, not desperation yet, but it's circling. And when you do find something, a young cobra, half your size, sunning itself lazily on a log, you hesitate. Because eating your own kind isn't just dangerous, it's exhausting. But you strike anyway. This one fights back, hard. You take a bite to the snout. Blood drips from your jaw, but you finish what you started. You win. You feed. You survive. That's the story, right? Wrong. Because now, digestion drags like tar. Your muscles ache more than they used to. Your slithering becomes sluggish. The trail you leave behind smells richer, muskier, easier to follow. You've crossed a threshold. Your size is no longer your asset. It's your liability. Here's a mainstream biological fact. King cobras are oviparous, but uniquely among snakes. The female not only builds a nest, she guards it. But what's less often discussed is how males pay the price for not nesting by shouldering the weight of constant movement, constant exposure, constant hunger. The females get a brief moment of rootedness. You are exile incarnate. You rest beneath a fallen log, letting the forest breathe around you. But the peace doesn't last. A rustle, a rhythm, not natural. Then, buzzing, boots again. But this time, they're not chasing you. They're baiting you. Something you thought you'd never see. A live chicken tied to a stick, fluttering helplessly, screeching into the forest air. A trap for you. See, you've become infamous. A farmer's goats went missing, blamed on a giant snake. A child saw something like a black rope with a head. Fear spreads fast in places where folklore and fact blur together, and you've made the mistake of being seen too many times. Villagers want a trophy, or proof, or just reassurance that something scary no longer lurks in the bushes, so they wait. And now, you wait too, hidden, breathing slowly, every instinct at war with the hunger in your belly. One theory among field researchers suggests king cobras avoid human settlements, not out of fear, but out of learned association. We're not born afraid of humans, we become afraid of humans. Right now, your brain is waging that exact war. You do not take the bait, not today. Hunger howls, but instinct wins. You slip backward into the underbrush and vanish, one heartbeat at a time. But you can't do this forever, because your body is aging, your reflexes are slower, your venom sacs don't refill as fast, your scales crack more often. You've entered the stage of life where survival isn't just about evading death, it's about enduring life. Another fringe tidbit. Some researchers have proposed that king cobras go semi-dormant during periods of environmental stress, slowing their metabolism, almost like a reptilian version of burnout. You're not sure if that's true, but it sure feels like burnout. You don't chase as much anymore. You strike only when you're certain. You sleep longer, move less. You've shifted from fighter to ghost. You still rule your territory, but now, it's more out of habit than dominance. The younger cobras stay clear, but only because they haven't realized yet that your reign is cracking. And one day soon, they'll challenge you. And when they do, you'll have a choice: strike or disappear. Sleep doesn't come easy anymore, not the real kind. You close your eyes, sure, but your body stays half awake, listening, smelling, reacting to the twitch of a leaf or the shift in air pressure. You're living in a world that no longer makes room for you. The jungle is shrinking, your strength is waning, and yet you're still expected to act like royalty. You move less, not because you're lazy, but because every movement costs energy, and energy is hard to come by. It's a delicate economy. One wrong transaction, and you collapse in the middle of a trail, unable to strike, unable to flee. The jungle may respect strength, but it devours weakness. You stick to shaded ravines and decaying root systems, now quiet places, familiar paths. You no longer bother to patrol the whole territory, just the core, just the few meters you still believe in. The rest, let it go. If a younger cobra wants it, let them prove they deserve it. And one day, one does. You hear him before you see him. Youth slithering through leaves like he owns the soil. You catch his scent. Male, strong, not yet reckless, but eager. You rise up behind a rock, watching. He doesn't know you're there. Or worse, he does, and doesn't care. This is the jungle's offer: fight for the throne, or fade into the ferns. You rise. He stops. Your hoods flare, but only briefly. You stare at each other for what feels like minutes. Then slowly, deliberately, you lower your hood. You sink back to the ground. You turn. You leave. Because you've done this before. You've fought. You've won. You've lost. You've eaten. You've loved. You've run. And now you're tired. Not broken. Just finished. There's no ceremony. No farewell. No montage. You disappear into a part of the jungle even you haven't dared enter before, far from the trails, the traps, the memories. Here's a scholarly debate for you. Some biologists wonder whether snakes experience territorial memory or emotional fatigue. Do they retire, in a sense? Is there a biological signal that tells them to give up territory, stop mating, slow down? You don't have an answer, but your body does. It moves like it's telling a story that doesn't need an audience anymore. Still, nature isn't finished with you just yet. As the days pass, your behavior changes again. Less hunting, more sunning. You rest under the same tree roots for hours, barely breathing, becoming part of the landscape. Lizards pass without fear. Frogs croak beside your tail. Even the monkeys stop shouting when they spot your silhouette. They just look, then look away, because in this state, you are no longer threat nor prey. You are myth. You are the whisper in the canopy. You are still the king, but a king at rest. Your scales dull. The once glossy black has faded to a mossy grey. Your belly drags heavier, not with weight, but with time. Your body knows. Your blood knows. This is the last chapter, and one morning, as dew clings to every leaf like silver breath, you stretch out on a sunlit stone for warmth. No ambush, no fear, just sun on scale, eyes half-lidded, still. The jungle moves on around you, because that's what it does, and nobody mourns a cobra. You never get to grow old in peace. Not here. There's no retirement plan for king cobras, no jungle pension, just more eyes watching you fade. More predators that now see opportunity instead of danger. Even the ground beneath your belly feels less respectful, softer, hungrier. And that's not your paranoia talking. It's experience. You're resting in a patch of overgrown bamboo. You haven't moved in a day, maybe two. You don't need to. You're not hunting. You're not fleeing. You're simply existing. But even that feels fragile now. Your breathing is shallow. Your tongue flicks once every minute, maybe less. The world has become quieter, not because it is, but because your senses are going, and that's when you hear it. Small, rapid, close, the heartbeat of something warm-blooded, fast, eager, close enough to feel, then crunch. A claw lands on your back, It's a mongoose, but not the one you fought when you were younger. This one's smaller, bolder, a juvenile, testing his luck. Probably doesn't even know your full legend. Probably doesn't care. In his eyes, you're just an aging meat stick with a hood. You spin, or try to. Your body betrays you. Too slow. He scrambles back before your strike lands. Not because he's faster, but because you're slower. This is the insult beneath the injury. Your venom is still deadly, but your delivery system, your body, is crumbling. You're a sports car with 4 flat tires. You could win any fight if someone gave you 10 extra seconds to warm up. But the jungle doesn't grant mercy rounds. The mongoose leaves, tail high, victory claimed. You lie there, breath ragged, the tip of your tongue twitching in shame. And that's when the jungle itself seems to shift. Everything's watching now, not you, the idea of you, because your legacy is real. Here's a fringe fact you might find morbidly poetic. In some rural communities, when a king cobra dies, the locals will bury it like a person, sometimes with flowers, sometimes with a small ceremony, not out of reverence, out of fear, superstition, because even dead, your body is powerful, but you don't know that. You're just done. You don't shed anymore. You don't travel. You find a dark, cool burrow under the gnarled roots of a fig tree, and you settle in. You coil tight, one last time. And there, surrounded by moss and silence, you do something you haven't done in years. You stop running, not from prey, not from rivals, not from humans. You simply go still. Some scientists are still debating whether snakes experience senescence, the aging process seen in mammals, or whether they simply endure until their organs fail. You, for what it's worth, are leaning toward the second theory. And so the sun rises and sets and rises again. You don't feel it anymore, but somewhere a hatchling slithers out of its egg. One of yours maybe, or maybe not. It doesn't matter. He's alone, small, venomous, afraid. The cycle begins again, and the jungle, it doesn't pause to mourn you, but for one brief moment, beneath the silence, it remembers you. You were king, even if only for a while. You don't know how long it's been since you last moved. Time loses meaning when your body starts surrendering piece by piece. Your tongue flicks only once an hour now, barely reaching past your jaw. Your heart beats slowly. So slowly you sometimes wonder if it's still there at all. You've become a relic in your own kingdom. But even in decline, the jungle doesn't leave you alone. Ants find you first. Small ones, curious. They swarm across your back like dust blown by wind. You twitch, weakly, and they scatter. But they'll be back. They always come back. Because the moment your body stops asserting, "I am alive," the forest begins its process of collection. In tropical ecosystems, even apex predators become compost. Nothing goes to waste. Your scales will flake, your body will bloat, and eventually your frame will collapse into the soil that once supported you. It's not poetic, it's practical. This is how the jungle recycles royalty. There's a term field biologists sometimes whisper during expeditions: silent death. It's the way most snakes go. No struggle, no sound, no audience. Just a long nap that doesn't end. You're almost there. And yet, in your final stillness, you remember the first strike that actually worked. The way your jaw flexed wide around that rat snake. The high of victory. The sharp burn of a rival's fangs. The strange, terrifying joy of mating season. The ache of laying low while men with sticks hunted you like a monster from a legend. You remember the birds who mocked you. The frogs who silenced when you passed. The lizard who once rode your back, unaware of the honor. You remember being feared. You remember being. And for one slow final moment, your heart ticks a little louder. Here's something the textbooks won't tell you. Some researchers believe large snakes, like you, may retain awareness until the very last cell collapses. Not consciousness in the human sense, but something deeper, primal, a silent knowing that the end has come, and it's okay, because your story didn't end with a mongoose or a machete. It ended on your own terms, alone but not forgotten, a whispered legend slithering through jungle myths, half remembered by tribes and trembling children, by biologists with clipboards and YouTube thumbnails screaming King of Snakes. You fade, not in fear, but in memory, because long after your coils rot into soil, your shadow still glides across this forest, and every time the leaves rustle without wind, someone wonders if you've truly gone. There's something eerie about legacy when it doesn't come with witnesses. You'd think, after all the kills, all the rivalries, all the hunts and matings and escapes, that your story would echo through the trees like thunder. But the jungle has no archivist, no scrolls, no statues carved in your image, just silence, and the occasional fang-shaped shadow slipping across a moonlit rock. Yet somehow, the myth persists. A child in a nearby village claims to have seen a serpent as long as a tree. His grandmother hushes him, spits twice, and tells him never to say such things aloud. A farmer, trimming bamboo near a stream, stops for a second, swears he saw movement, slithering, long, too long. He doesn't investigate. He turns around, goes home early. You've become law, but your body, your real, aching, decomposing body, remains hidden beneath roots and soil, still, slowly returning to the same earth that once nursed your hunger. Let's be blunt about the biology. Decomposition in humid tropical forests happens fast. Within days, ants, beetles and microbes begin their work. Within weeks, your flesh becomes fertilizer. Within a month, even your bones fade into the loam. There's no grave, no headstone, just damp, soft dirt, and maybe the faint outline of a scale. But even so, something remains. A trail, a groove pressed into the earth by your final crawl, a discarded shed skin, faded now, but still catching light when the sun angle's just right. Maybe even the faint musk you left behind, sharp, bitter, a warning to others who still dare slither these woods. And sometimes they do. Young cobras, juveniles, wandering, searching for food, for territory, for themselves. They pass near the place where you once lay. They pause, not because they know, but because something in the soil tells them to, something ancestral, wordless, heavy. There's no jungle king to greet them, no lessons handed down, but your myth lingers like humidity, thick, invisible, impossible to shake. And here's a tender, almost laughable truth. Scientists have found that king cobras can recognize the chemical trails of other individuals and avoid or follow them accordingly. A sort of scent memory, encoded in the air itself. You, long gone, may still shape the lives of snakes you never meet. One avoids your old trail, sensing the weight of a legend he can't name. Another follows it, hungry to become whatever you were. This is your inheritance, not a throne, not a crown, just tension in the leaves, whispers in the wind, the hiss that silences birds mid-song. You live on not in muscle, but in myth, and in this jungle, that might just be the truest form of royalty there is. Your body is gone, your bones gone, your name never written, and yet you are still here, not here in the flesh, no, but in the deep, marrow-level memory of the forest, in the instincts of the hatchlings, the fears of the prey, the nightmares of the villagers. You're not a cobra anymore. You've become the cobra, the archetype, the warning etched into the soil itself. Let's drift for a moment, deeper, into the underbrush, through the tangled silence where vines grow faster than memory. A juvenile king cobra inches along a path you once took. The same curve around the banyan root, the same damp burrow beneath a fallen tree. He doesn't know your story, but he follows your trail like a script. He flicks his tongue at the same moss you brushed. He coils under the same shadow. And one day, he sees something. A mongoose. His first. He flares his hood. It's not very big yet, but it does the job. He growls that eerie tracheal rumble you pioneered. The mongoose pauses, just long enough, and the young cobra strikes. He misses, but he lives, because the mongoose retreats, because for a moment it remembered something older than itself, a lesson passed down through blood and rumor. Even your enemies remember you. Here's a rarely discussed truth. Ecosystems develop behavioral adaptations based not just on survival pressure, but on recurring myth-level events. The memory of a king cobra that wiped out half a mongoose litter may not live in any individual brain, but the fear, the hesitation becomes generational, inherited, like trauma, like religion. And speaking of myth, humans have not forgotten you either. A documentary crew sets up motion cameras in the jungle you once ruled. They're hoping to catch a glimpse of the Ghost King, a local legend said to be 20 feet long and invisible to drones. The footage they collect is inconclusive, blurs, shadows, but enough to trigger a dozen internet theories. You become a cryptid, a meme, a bedtime threat for unruly kids. One researcher reviews old trail camera footage and finds an image, blurry but unmistakable. A cobra, massive, head raised, alone, date stamped from years ago. The researcher smiles, whispers, "He was real. That's you. That was you." But you don't need recognition. You don't need closure. You were never built for monuments. Your legacy isn't carved in stone. It's coiled in instinct. A fringe detail some herpetologists love to debate. Can king cobras navigate back to the same dens year after year? Some say yes, citing pheromone trails and long-term spatial memory. Others argue no, too nomadic, too instinct-driven. But you were that cobra. You had a den, and it's still there. Overgrown, yes, half collapsed. But every now and then, another snake finds it. A vine snake, maybe, or a baby crate. They don't know what the space once was, but something in the air tells them to tread lightly, because in this forgotten corner of the jungle, beneath layers of rot and regrowth, there is still a feeling, faint but undeniable, that something powerful once lived here, something that ruled, something that did not die in vain. You were king. You were born alone. You hunted alone. You ruled alone. And now, long after your scales have peeled away, after your bones have melted into mulch, you persist, not in form but in function. The ecosystem you once moved through with such brutal grace still feels your absence like a missing beat in a drumline. Quietly, subtly, but undeniably, let's drift forward, past the decay, past the silence, to where your influence still slithers. A young biologist, ankle deep in muck, follows a trail. It's a winding depression in the soil, nearly invisible, but he's trained for this. He stops near your old haunt, a ravine shaped by monsoons and time. He crouches. He frowns. "Too large for a rat snake," he murmurs. He doesn't know it yet, but he's standing over the final path you carved in this world. Your last patrol, your last act of ownership, in a land that never once respected your claim. He places a trail cam. 2 nights later, it captures a silhouette. Not you, impossible, but close. Another king cobra. Massive, broad, confident in its slither, not scared of the camera, not in a rush, and moving across your territory like it knows the way. Here's the fascinating part. Territorial inheritance is not well studied in snakes. Unlike mammals, they don't leave scent markers for offspring. No wills, no heirlooms. But the young still find their way back, to dens, to hunting paths, to histories they shouldn't remember, but somehow do. Maybe it's coincidence. Or maybe the jungle has memory beyond scent and soil, because here comes the new monarch, a little darker, a little leaner, but with the same deliberate rhythm, the same unhurried menace. He curls under your old log, pauses, then moves on. He doesn't stay. Not yet, but he's watching. Somewhere, a village boy finds a discarded skin, nearly 2 meters long. His father tells him the usual story, that cobras bring death, that their ghosts cry in the night. But the boy keeps the skin, tucks it under his mattress, just in case it means something more. A researcher publishes a paper a year later, mentions that King Cobra territories once vacated are rarely reoccupied by other species. Too quiet, too heavy. Some say it's environmental, others say it's spiritual, and yet no one doubts that when a king cobra disappears, something shifts. Because even after death, your influence lingers in the way prey moves, in the silence of birds, in the paths other snakes dare not slither. You don't need a crown to be remembered. You don't even need a body. All you needed was presence. And that, well, that never left. The jungle doesn't keep time the way we do. No clocks, no calendars, just seasons bleeding into each other, wet into dry, hunger into silence, birth into death. But somewhere out there, time has passed. Enough for your memory to become folklore. Enough for your final trail to grow over with moss and ash. And still, you're here. Not physically, no. Your coils have long since unraveled. Your fangs now dust. Your hood no more than a shape etched into myth. But in the hush that falls just before rain, in the sudden silence when the birds stop mid-call, that's you. A farmer finds strange tracks in the dust near his chicken coop. Wide, heavy. His grandfather tells him, "That's not a snake. That's the snake." He lights incense the next day, just in case. Elsewhere, a girl draws a cobra in the sand, bigger than her whole body. Her mother scolds her, says it's bad luck to joke about things like that. But the girl smiles. She doesn't feel afraid. She says, "He looked kind, and maybe you were." In some brief forgotten moment, between all the striking and coiling and eating your own kind, maybe you felt something that wasn't just instinct. Maybe you paused under the moonlight one night and thought, not in words, but in that strange animal knowing, I am alone, but never unloved, not by the jungle, not by the leaves that curled around you in sleep, not by the trees that bowed slightly when you passed, not by the wind that whispered through your shed skin and carried your scent downstream. And now, here we are, at the edge of your story, at the edge of memory. The jungle is quieter now, softer. The new king has taken his place. He moves differently. He doesn't know your name, but he feels it, like a pressure in the soil, like a warning carried in the heat. Your reign is over, but your echo remains. And when he dies, as all kings do, you'll be waiting, not to haunt, just to welcome. Because even in death, the king still watches the forest, always. And now, your journey is complete. You can rest. Not in the frantic way you once rested, tail twitching, eyes half open, always listening, but truly rest. Let your breathing slow with the rhythm of dripping rain on palm leaves. Let your mind soften, like the edges of night falling over a jungle canopy. Let your thoughts fade like footprints in wet soil. The world you knew is still spinning. The birds still sing. The insects still hum. The trees still stretch upward, searching for sun. But your story, it's done spinning now. You've handed it over to the wind, to the leaves, to the hatchlings. Who'll never know your name but still feel your shape. In the stories passed from scent to scale. Close your eyes. Breathe one last time as the forest exhales. There's no more need to hunt, no rivals to fight, no sounds to interpret or scents to decode. There's only peace now, a long, coiling drift into something quieter than silence, deeper than sleep. And when the rains come, they'll wash over the place you died without fanfare. without grief, because the jungle doesn't mourn the way we do, but it remembers. So do the roots, so do the bones, and now, so do you. Good night, Serpent King. Sleep deep. The forest will keep your crown safe.